Today, we are diving deep into a truly epic story from the ancient world. It's a story about power, about promises, and about the absolutely catastrophic price of breaking them. This is the tale of a king, a covenant, and the collapse of an entire nation.
You know, it's a question we've all probably thought about, but for the people living in the final, desperate days of ancient Jerusalem, this was not some philosophical debate. No, for them, it was a matter of life and death, with consequences that were about to become terrifyingly real.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in the early 6th century BC. The undisputed superpower of the day is the Babylonian Empire, and it has its sights set on, well, pretty much everything. And sitting on the throne of the tiny kingdom of Judah is its very last king, a man named Zedekiah. But he's basically a puppet king, installed by Babylon, and his whole kingdom is living on borrowed time. It's right here, in this pressure cooker, that our story begins.
So first up, let's talk about the king. This guy is caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, a really, really hard place. He's got the Babylonian army breathing down his neck, and he's just received a divine warning that he simply cannot ignore.
So in one corner, you have Zedekiah, the king of a nation that's basically on the brink of collapse. And in the other corner, you've got Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of Babylon, who is literally the most powerful man on the planet at the time. And right into this tense standoff walks the prophet Jeremiah with a message for Zedekiah, and it is not good news.
Wow. I mean, what's so striking about this prophecy is how incredibly personal it is. This isn't some generic, you're going to lose the war kind of message. No, this is a promise of a deeply personal, face-to-face, and utterly humiliating confrontation. Zedekiah is being told in no uncertain terms, there is no escape. You will stand before your conqueror.
But then, here's a really weird twist. In the middle of all this doom and gloom, Zedekiah gets this one little piece of good news. He's told he won't be killed in battle. He's actually promised he'll die in peace. Now, you'd think that's a relief, right? But hold that thought, because as we are about to see, sometimes there are fates much, much worse than a quick death on the battlefield.
Okay, so that's the political drama happening with the king. But while all that's going on, there is a deep moral crisis brewing inside the city walls. And this is where the story gets even more intense, because it's not just about the king anymore. It's about a sacred promise made and then shattered by the people themselves.
So, with the Babylonian army literally at their gates, the people of Jerusalem make a huge public show of faith. They make a sacred pact, a covenant, to finally start obeying a law they've been ignoring for ages. It was called the Sabbatical Law, and it required them to free any of their fellow Hebrews who had become slaves every 7 years. Now, this wasn't just some minor rule. It was a cornerstone of their society, a reminder of their own freedom from slavery in Egypt. This was a desperate, last-ditch effort to get on God's good side. And they do it. They actually go through with it. They proclaim liberty, and they set their slaves free. But then, the Babylonian army has to temporarily pull back to go deal with another problem. And what do the wealthy citizens of Jerusalem do the moment the pressure is off? You guessed it. They go back on their sacred word and drag the very same people they just freed right back into slavery.
Yeah, that stunning act of hypocrisy, it did not go unnoticed. And the judgment that comes down for breaking this social contract is somehow even more terrifying than the one aimed at the king.
I mean, it all boils down to this. They were given a clear choice. They could uphold their sacred promise and give freedom to their own people, or they could break that promise for their own short-term gain. And they chose greed. They refused to proclaim liberty.
And a consequence? It's a perfect, chilling, and unforgettable piece of irony. The response comes through Jeremiah, and it's basically this. Oh, so you refuse to proclaim liberty to your brothers and sisters? Fine. In that case, I will proclaim a liberty for you. A liberty to the sword, to disease, and to starvation. In a terrifying twist, they are freed to their own destruction.
And here's the thing, these weren't just empty threats. History itself recorded with brutal precision exactly how both of these prophecies, the one against the king and the one against the people, came true.
For King Zedekiah, the end was just as horrific as predicted. He was captured, dragged before King Nebuchadnezzar, just as the prophecy said, mouth to mouth. And there, he was forced to watch his own sons executed right in front of him. The very last thing he ever saw was the death of his entire lineage. And then his eyes were put out. So yeah, he didn't die by the sword. He died in peace,
but he lived out his days in chains in the total darkness of a Babylonian prison.
And the people, the ones who broke their promise, well, they got the liberty they were promised. When Jerusalem finally fell, the city was handed over to the sword, to pestilence, and to famine. The survivors were rounded up and dragged off into exile, becoming nothing but prey and spoil for their enemies.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? It's an ancient story about a failed kingdom and a faithless people. Why does it still matter to us today?
Well, when you boil it all down, this is a story about integrity, isn't it? It's a powerful, stark reminder that our promises actually matter. It doesn't matter if it's a king's treaty with an emperor or a society's promise to protect its most vulnerable. These covenants, this story tells us, are not cheap. They carry an immense weight, and there is always, always a price for breaking them.
And really, that's the question this story leaves us with. In our own lives, in our own societies, with all of our agreements both written and unwritten, what are the promises we hold sacred? And what, ultimately, is the price we're willing to pay if we too decide to break them?